In the annals of aviation history, few names shine as brightly as Pan American World Airways, known worldwide as Pan Am. This story isn't just about an airline. It's a saga of ambition, innovation, and the unrelenting spirit of the American dream. It's a tale that begins in the roaring 20s and stretches across the golden age of air travel, marking Pan Am not only as a carrier of passengers, but as a harbinger of global connectivity. It was 1927, a time when the world was rapidly shrinking thanks to the wonders of aviation. On March 14, 1927, Pan American Airways was founded by Major Henry Arnold, Carl Spaatz, and John H. Jowett. Their dream was simple yet audacious: to connect countries, to shrink the world. Pan Am began with pioneering airmail and passenger service between Key West, Florida, and Havana, Cuba. However, the founders were never able to realize this opportunity. It would have ended in failure had it not been for a young businessman, Juan Trippe, who purchased Pan American Airways in the fall of 1927. Under the keen leadership of Juan Trippe, an entrepreneur with lofty prospects, Pan Am quickly spread its wings. The company began carrying mail on October 19, 1927, using a Fairchild FC-2 aircraft. Trippe, a man whose name became synonymous with commercial aviation, took the airline into uncharted territory. In 1929, Trippe's dream came true as the airline made its first passenger flight from Miami to San Juan. The 2,000-mile trip took Pan Am 56 hours, including 2 overnight stops. In the 1930s, Pan Am acquired a fleet of flying boats, majestic airplanes that were bathed in water before taking to the skies. These were not just airplanes, but symbols of luxury and technological excellence. Destinations expanded. Central and South America were just the beginning. Soon, transatlantic and trans-Pacific routes were added, shortening the globe by one flight. The flights were long and comfortable, quality food, impeccable service, and comfortable cabins. The fare was also at a high level. One of the most expensive was the Trans-Asian flight. The cost of a ticket for a flight from San Francisco to Hong Kong in 1937 was $950 one way. In today's terms, about $16,000. A typical dinner for first-class passengers consisted of 5 courses. In the 50s, the airline had a meal contract with Maxim's, an upscale Parisian restaurant. Pan Am didn't just fly, it innovated. It led to the jet age, creating jetliners such as the Boeing 707 and the iconic Boeing 747. Pan Am ordered 6 Boeing 314s for passenger transportation. This craft flew the first transatlantic flight from Baltimore to Lisbon and later to France and the United Kingdom. These airplanes were not just machines, they were titans of the sky, carrying more passengers, flying farther and faster, and redefining the meaning of air travel. By the mid-20th century, Pan Am had a near monopoly on international routes. The company's headquarters were located in New York City, in the 58-story Pan Am Building skyscraper, next to Grand Central Station. With its distinctive cut corners and huge letters, Pan Am at the top of the facade. It was not just an airline, it was a symbol of American ingenuity and global aspirations, but numbers speak louder than words. In the peak of its golden age, Pan Am's fleet size was a testament to its dominance. With over 200 aircraft, it connected 86 countries, serving every continent except Antarctica. Imagine, in 1970 alone, Pan Am flew 11 million passengers, 11 million dreams, 11 million stories, all entrusted to the blue globe logo of Pan Am, fondly known as the Blue Meatball. The airline's primary hub, the Worldport at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York City, wasn't just a terminal, it was a gateway to the world. It symbolized Pan Am's central role in international travel, a role that was as glamorous as it was crucial. The pilots, donned in their white uniform caps, weren't just flying planes, they were carrying the hopes and dreams of a post-war world, hungry for exploration and connection. The Pan Am brand transcended aviation. It became a cultural icon, a symbol of luxury and the glamorous life of intercontinental travel. Its use of the word "Clipper" in its aircraft names and call signs echoed a bygone era of maritime exploration, evoking a romance with adventure and discovery. The Blue Globe logo became a symbol of reliability, safety, and innovation. However, this golden age was not just a story of success. It was a prelude to challenges, missteps, and eventual decline. As the narrative unfolds, we'll see how this giant, once the ruler of the skies, faced turbulence that tested its very foundations. The story of Pan Am is not just about its rise, it's a cautionary tale of how even the mightiest can falter. As we journey through the rise and fall of this iconic airline, remember, this is more than history. It's a lesson in the fleeting nature of success, the importance of adaptation, and the unyielding march of progress. Launching Pan American World Airways was a venture marked not just by ambition, but by a series of formidable challenges and obstacles. The founder, Juan Trippe, a man of vision and determination, faced a labyrinth of hurdles in the pursuit of his dream to create an airline that would redefine international travel. Trippe's journey began in the late 1920s, a time when commercial aviation was in its infancy and fraught with uncertainty. The foremost challenge was the sheer novelty of international air travel. In an era dominated by rail and sea transport, convincing investors and the public of the viability and safety of air travel was a daunting task. Trippe had to contend with widespread skepticism about the practicality and future of commercial aviation. Financial hurdles were among the most significant obstacles. Trippe needed substantial capital to purchase aircraft, secure routes, and establish operations. The initial investment in Pan Am was a significant sum for the time. While specific figures of his personal investment are not readily available, it's known that he had to pool resources from various investors. Trippe leveraged his connections, including those with powerful Wall Street financiers and influential politicians, to secure the necessary funding. Convincing these investors required not just a solid business plan, but also a demonstration of the potential of international air travel. Another major problem was the regulatory and legal obstacles. In the 1920s, the regulatory framework for international air transportation was virtually non-existent. Trippe had to go through a maze of negotiations and agreements to obtain air transportation rights and establish routes, especially in foreign countries. This required complex diplomatic negotiations, as many countries were wary of allowing a foreign airline to operate within their borders. The US government approved Pan Am's initial contract to carry mail, with the proviso that the Colombian carrier SCADTA would have no competition on flights between Latin America and the United States. The government also helped Pan Am insulate itself from US competition by treating the airline as the instrument of choice for international flights. The company expanded into international destinations, benefiting from a virtual monopoly on overseas routes. The technological limitations of the era also posed significant challenges. Early airplanes had limited range and payload capacity, and many of the destinations Trippe planned to open to Pan Am required airplanes capable of traveling long distances over water. A regular line from San Francisco to the Philippines opened on November 22, 1935. Martin M130 flying boats, built specifically to Pan American's order, operated here. At first, they carried only mail, but since October 21, 1936, they began to fly with passengers. In 1938, the line was extended to Hong Kong. In November 1937, another Pacific route was opened, from San Francisco to New Zealand. The creation of a fleet capable of performing international flights required significant investment in new aviation technologies and adaptation of aircraft, like flying boats, which became synonymous with Pan Am in the early years of its existence. Moreover, establishing a reliable and safe operation was paramount. This involved not only procuring the right aircraft, but also training pilots and crew to an exceptionally high standard. Safety concerns were a significant barrier to public acceptance of air travel, and Trippe knew that any major incident could be catastrophic for the future of Pan Am and commercial aviation as a whole. As the 1950s drew to a close, Pan American World Airways soared into its zenith, a period where its name became synonymous with the glamour and allure of international travel. This was the epoch when Pan Am didn't just fly planes, it flew dreams, ambitions, and aspirations. It was a time when the world looked up and saw not just aircraft, but the embodiment of luxury and innovation. But beneath the sheen of success, financial and operational challenges were simmering, poised to impact the airline's future trajectory. The late 1950s through the 1970s marked Pan Am's golden age. Under the leadership of Juan Trippe, Pan Am's fleet and reach expanded exponentially. In this era, Pan Am wasn't merely an airline, it was a global titan, a symbol of American prowess and technological dominance. The introduction of the Boeing 707 in 1958 catapulted Pan Am and the entire airline industry into the jet age. This was a time of firsts, of breaking barriers and setting standards. Pan Am became the first airline to operate a commercial jet across the Atlantic, forever changing the face of international travel. Then came the Boeing 747 in 1970, a jumbo jet that redefined the skies. This colossal aircraft, with its iconic upper deck, enabled Pan Am to transport an astounding 11 million passengers to 86 countries in just 1 year. During these peak years, Pan Am's financials were as sky-high as its aircraft. The revenue soared, the profits climbed, and the brand value escalated to stratospheric heights. Pan Am became more than an airline. It became a cultural icon, a symbol of the jet-set lifestyle. The Pan Am building in New York City, a towering testament to the airline's financial and cultural clout, stood as a beacon of its success. Yet, this period of unparalleled success was not without its challenges. The seeds of future troubles were subtly being sown. As Pan Am expanded, it faced increasing operational costs. The oil crisis of the 1970s sent fuel prices skyrocketing, putting a strain on the airline's finances. Competition began to intensify, both from domestic carriers and emerging international airlines. The regulatory landscape was shifting, and the era of airline deregulation was on the horizon. The decisions made during this time, though overshadowed by the glitz and glamour of success, were critical. The focus on expansion and dominance in the international market left Pan Am vulnerable to shifts in the global economy and the airline industry. While the leadership, particularly Tripper, was celebrated for their visionary approach, there were questions about the sustainability of such rapid expansion. As we look back at this golden era of Pan Am, we see a tale of triumph, of an airline that touched the skies in more ways than one. But beneath the surface of this success story were lurking challenges and decisions that would later steer the course of Pan Am towards turbulent skies. This was a time of splendor and spectacle, but also of strategic choices that would have far-reaching consequences in the years to come. As the 1970s unfurled, the once unassailable Pan American World Airways began to encounter the first signs of turbulence. This era marked a paradigm shift where external economic shocks and strategic missteps intertwined, steering Pan Am into a challenging course. The 1973 oil crisis, a seismic event in global economic history, sent shockwaves that reverberated through the corridors of Pan Am. This astronomical rise in oil prices had a domino effect on the cost of jet fuel, a critical operational expense for any airline. For Pan Am, whose fleet of gas-guzzling jumbo jets was its crown jewel, this was a financial nightmare. The increase in fuel costs severely impacted Pan Am's operating expenses, eroding its profitability. This economic maelstrom coincided with a period of strategic misjudgments within Pan Am's leadership. The airline, under the stewardship of its executives, embarked on an ambitious but ultimately ill-fated expansion strategy. While the allure of global dominance was tempting, the execution was flawed. Investments in new routes and fleet expansion came at a time when the airline should have been consolidating and optimizing its operations. Pan Am, once the pioneer of the skies, found itself overextended and vulnerable. The airline's management, once lauded for their visionary leadership, now faced criticism for their decisions. The focus on aggressive expansion, without a corresponding strategy to counterbalance the increased costs and changing market dynamics, was a critical error. The leadership, including CEOs such as William T. Sewell, who served from 1971 to 1981, faced the daunting task of navigating these uncharted waters. Their decisions, or lack thereof, in response to the changing industry landscape, played a pivotal role in the unfolding drama. As the decade progressed, Pan Am's financial woes deepened. The oil crisis-induced spike in operating costs necessitated an increase in ticket prices. However, this led to a decline in passenger numbers, as air travel became a luxury fewer could afford. The airline's once lucrative routes saw reduced demand, and the once busy terminals of Pan Am stood as somber reminders of better days. Compounding these challenges was the onset of deregulation in the airline industry. The Airline Deregulation Act of 1978, meant to increase competition and lower fares, had an unintended side effect for legacy carriers like Pan Am. It opened the floodgates for new, more agile competitors who could operate at lower costs and offer offer cheaper fares. Pan Am, with its high operational costs and sprawling, inefficient route network, found itself outmatched and outmaneuvered. In 1980, Pan Am made a significant move by acquiring National Airlines for $437 million. This acquisition was intended to expand Pan Am's domestic presence, providing feed for its international flights. However, the integration process was plagued with operational and cultural challenges, leading to inefficiencies and escalating costs. In the early 1980s, under CEO Edward Acker, Pan Am embarked on a fleet modernization plan. This involved significant capital expenditure at a time when the airline was already grappling with financial pressures. The costs associated with updating the fleet added to the company's burgeoning debt. Throughout the 1980s, Pan Am witnessed a steady decline in market share as competition intensified. The airline's revenue per passenger mile, a key indicator of financial health, showed a consistent downward trend. By the mid-1980s, Pan Am's revenues were declining year over year, failing to keep pace with rising operational costs. In a bid to alleviate financial stress, Pan Am resorted to selling some of its most valuable assets. This included the sale of its Pan Am building in New York in 1981 for $400 million and part of its Pacific division to United Airlines in 1985 for $750 million. While these sales provided temporary liquidity, they also signified the shrinking of Pan Am's operational footprint. The aftermath of the 1973 oil crisis continued to impact Pan Am into the 1980s. The cost of jet fuel, a significant portion of operational expenses, remained high. Combined with the additional costs incurred from the National Airlines integration, Pan Am's operating expenses ballooned, eroding profitability. The deregulated environment led to aggressive price competition. To stay competitive, Pan Am had to lower ticket prices, which significantly reduced profit margins. The airline struggled to compete with low-cost carriers on price points, further weakened its financial position. The series of strategic decisions, including fleet modernization and the acquisition of National Airlines, led to substantial debt accumulation. By the end of the 1980s, Pan Am's debt burden had become unsustainable, severely impacting its operational flexibility and strategic options. As the 1980s waned, Pan American World Airways, once a colossus of the skies, faced its twilight. This final chapter in Pan Am's saga, spanning the late 1980s to its ultimate demise in 1991, is a tale of desperate attempts to avert a looming catastrophe, a struggle against insurmountable odds. The latter part of the 1980s was marked by frantic efforts to salvage what was left of the airline. Pan Am's leadership, under CEOs such as Thomas Plaskett, who took the helm in 1988, grappled with a rapidly deteriorating financial situation. Plaskett, like his predecessors, faced an uphill battle. The airline was hemorrhaging money, its debts mounting, and its options dwindling. Pan Am's situation was exacerbated by a series of external shocks that would deal crippling blows to its already fragile state. One such devastating blow came on December 21, 1988, when Pan Am Flight 103 was destroyed by a terrorist bombing over Lockerbie, Scotland. This tragedy not only resulted in the tragic loss of 270 lives, but also severely tarnished Pan Am's reputation for safety and security. The Lockerbie disaster sent shockwaves through the airline, leading to a steep decline in passenger confidence and a subsequent drop in ticket sales. In a bid to stay afloat, Pan Am's leadership embarked on a series of asset sales. The airline sold its lucrative London routes to United Airlines in 1991, a move that brought in much-needed cash, but further eroded its operational capacity. The sale of these assets, while providing a temporary financial reprieve, was akin to selling the family silver. It was a short-term fix that undermined the airline's long-term viability. The financial strain was evident in the numbers. By the end of the 1980s, Pan Am's debt had ballooned, and the airline was losing hundreds of millions of dollars annually. The cost-cutting measures, including layoffs and route reductions, did little to stem the tide of red ink. The once proud global network of Pan Am was shrinking, its fleet aging, and its service declining. In a final bid to rescue the airline, Plaskett attempted to merge Pan Am with other carriers, but these efforts were in vain. The airline industry was undergoing its own transformations, and Pan Am, with its myriad problems, was not an attractive merger candidate. The end came on December 4, 1991. 2021. After years of financial struggles, operational challenges, and a tarnished reputation, Pan Am ceased operations. The closure of this iconic airline was not just the end of a company, it was the end of an era. The final descent of Pan Am was a confluence of internal mismanagement, external shocks, and a failure to adapt to a changing world. The downfall of Pan Am is a story of a giant unable to navigate the storms of change. It stands as a cautionary tale in the annals of corporate history, a reminder that even the mightiest can fall when faced with unyielding challenges and an inability to evolve. In the end, Pan Am's legacy is not defined by its demise, but by the indelible mark it left on the world of aviation.